Welcome to the Hansen Brothers podcast. I'm Timmy and joined by my brother Kevin. We are teammates and world champions in rallycross. This podcast is our space to catch up while traveling the motorsport world. This week we'll be talking about Formula E returning for season 11. I've also got an update on my esports program, and of course it's off season, so training, nutrition is a big topic for now. But first up, Kevin, how was your weekend? And did you watch the Formula One?
Yeah, it was a good weekend. I went to see my friends on Saturday, which was really nice, and had a little dinner and a little drink and a bit of nightclub, so that was really fun. Went home, watched the Formula One, and I mean, Saturday, really good McLaren teamwork, which was really nice to see. I mean, they haven't done that so well this year, so that was really cool. And then I watched the race yesterday on the Sunday, and I thought to not lift for the yellow flag was a bit silly that you learn in go-kart. So that ruined a bit the race in the end, but it was exciting to see Lando come back through the pack. So yeah, it's all kicking off really in towards the end of the season in F1. But it's all good and fun. Did you watch it?
I watched a little bit of it, and but not the whole race. I saw the Lando penalty and that he was kind of disappointed. Yellow flags, you learn to lift on yellow flags when my son knows that. He's 6 years old, Sam, when he just did his first go-kart race, but it can happen to anyone. But let's get into it. Formula E. There are some pretty big updates coming, and because it's kind of close, especially for me, like racing for Andretti and racing for a team that is based off of the Formula E team, really with the same team principle. And some people have been like between Formula E and Extreme E. Like, it feels very relevant to talk about them. They were champion 2 years ago with Jake Dennis, and this year there are some kind of big updates in there. They're also actually now going to be a four-wheel drive car.
I mean, that is the first time a Formula car is a four-wheel driven one, which is, I think, pretty crazy. I mean, I always think it's so mega with a four-wheel drive car, but like when you have had the chance to try a Formula car, it's always like you can't slide, and if you slide, you have nothing to save it with because it's just rear-wheel drive. So this will change the whole, I think, character of driving the Formula car. If they have a little four-wheel drive to save them mid-corner from a snap and you just pull them out, I think this could be a revolutionary for Formula E and for like circuit racing like that. It's going to be super, super interesting to see how it works. But it's not, I don't think it's four-wheel drive all the time. I think it's just like part-time. I think maybe the four-wheel drive full-time is coming in the future, but I don't think it's full on right now.
Yeah, I'm just getting like live updates as we speak from my friend, or our friend Carlos, who's an engineer there. He say they have now 350 kilowatt total, 300 on the rear axle and 50 on the front axle. So it's not like full-on four-wheel drive that we have in rallycross, but since the Gen 3 car, they put drive shafts in the front to be able to do regen with all four wheels, because obviously when you brake mostly with the front. So a lot of power there was wasted on just braking before. Now they do regen, but for this season, and it's kind of exciting, I think, to add like the power to the front axle. And it does change the driving style a lot. Like we touched on this in the episode where we had questions from the fans. We asked rear wheel drive or front wheel drive. And we both said we prefer to go fast. We prefer a front wheel drive car because it's more similar to four wheel drive. And these guys in Formula E, they're pros at rear wheel drive. So that can really like show some talent in the field there of who can adapt the quickest to kind of a whole new driving style.
Yeah, and I think also thinking of just a little bit of front power and a lot of rear power, all I think of is our setup 2022 in Norway after the preseason testing with the WRX car.
Yeah.
And we had done, too much, like then you could set only like the power you were going to get at the front axle compared to the rear at different speeds. So in Höljes, we optimized almost it to perfection, but then it wasn't so natural to drive. So we went out in practice in Norway and it was super heavy rear wheel drive. And we just spun on warm up like crazy. And it was like disaster because I couldn't believe like, what are they doing? It's supposed to be a new era. Electric's going to be so good. And then we're like spinning and doing all sorts of things on warm up. That just makes me think of that. But yeah, it's going to be a big difference for them to have this new little feature.
Yeah, well, we looked like total rookies when we were doing that. But the reason is, and it now again gets a bit technical, the reason is that in the first two seasons of World Rallycross, when we had front motor, rear motor, the FIA made it mandatory to have a very simple software, which basically, depending on how fast you were going, you could choose which balance between front to rear you wanted. And the difficulty there was that in the start, in the launch, because you have so heavy acceleration and going dead straight, then for whatever speed, you needed a big split between front to rear that you have to put the maximum power down for the start, which everybody knows start is the most important in rallycross. But the problem came when we had high speed, but we didn't accelerate. So that happens sometimes, like when you're sliding, you're going sideways. Then we had the certain speed, and then because we had set the split front to rear power for the start, where we have a lot of weight transfer, when you're going sideways, you're not really accelerating, but you're putting the power down. And then we got almost all of the power in the rear, and then we just spun. And we looked like rookies.
We were rookies. It was the first time we worked with electric. So, I mean, it's not... have you ever driven the Formula E car? No.
I haven't driven the Formula E car. I've just tried the simulator way back when we drove for Peugeot. I tried the DS simulator. And it was very cool to get into it. Like the simulator was great, but started off doing some qualifying laps, and that's just like driving normal single seater. But getting into the energy management, when I got the target from the engineers, I need to do this lap time, but not spend more energy than this. So of course in Formula E, when they do it properly, they have the beeps in the ear. So they get a beep when they have to lift the throttle, get a beep when they have to regen, and then they brake on feeling. I kind of had to figure it out on the fly when I was driving, but it was super hard. And I found it the hardest was that you're coming the end of the straight and you're used to pushing the entry and the braking point and everything. But now you're just coming off the throttle, you're coasting, and you kind of feel like you're just relaxing coming into the corner. And then you put a bit of regen on, you still feel like you're relaxing, but suddenly then you need to be flat out on the limit, but in a very different place. Like you were just coasting for so long, and then suddenly maximum on the limit. And carrying minimum speed was very important for saving energy also.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I remember I drove the simulator too, and so strange to have like no problem to hit the target lap time. To save the energy was the difficult point, but obviously it's like anything, you get used to it, I guess. And I mean, also that's part of the great overtaking opportunities in Formula E, because they do not push the limits. They don't go flat out in a way. They have a lot of, like you say, coasting and just rolling and regenning, so they can really, just throttle a bit extra and pass people. And that's what they manage a lot. They don't want to stay in the pack, save energy, or they want to be up in the front and just try and hold that position. But if just to skip a bit of regen and pass people, that's why you see so many crazy races in Formula E. So I look forward to I've not really watched a lot. I think it's on Eurosport in Sweden, and I don't have Eurosport, so I just watch the highlights and stuff. But I always enjoy, I think it's good racing, to be fair, and it's one of those championships. It's been around for a long time now, so it's hard to get to know it quite well, and it starts to be a bit of history and so on. So yeah, I look obviously sharing a little bit extra for Andretti in there, just because it's a little bit family.
Yeah, exactly. And you were the official Andretti reserve driver for Extreme E. Do you remember that? Oh, in preseason testing,
one race.
Yeah, the JBXC hadn't. No, they were with Jenson then, so you weren't driving for them yet. You joined us for the testing with Andretti. We tried to figure out how to drive the Extreme E car, and then you and Roger had an agreement that you were the official reserve driver. You got to test the car also, and you came. Did you come to Saudi, by the way? The first ever race?
No, it's the only race I've ever missed in Extreme E, and from what I hear from everyone, it's the right one to miss, because it was carnage, it was a lot of uncertainty, it was far to travel to the racetrack. I mean, first time for everything, right? So it's the only one I missed, but I was on standby. I remember watching you race that, I think it was a semi-final or so in the morning. I was out running, did a morning run with my friends, came back home and watched the start of the race. And I think it must have been the final, because I remember I was super excited because you were leading, and then you dropped Johan or someone in the first little weird chicane. And then I was like, oh, that's it then. That's over. That's the race. Because it was so dusty.
Yeah, it was so dusty. Like the natural gaps between the cars ended up being like 30 seconds. You had to be 30 seconds behind to even see a thing. And yeah, I did get the better launch. I had pole position, and I was leading down like this massive straight into a fast chicane. And Johan, to be honest, he pulled off a fantastic move.
Another high risk, high reward move that he sometimes
yeah,
makes.
but what people don't know about that move is that it looks like he just did the crossback. Like he went from wider than me and getting a tighter exit with speed. And he did that while crossing the dust, which was very impressive. But we would have crashed unless I hit the bump pretty badly, because I also went into the corner a bit too fast. And I hit the bump pretty badly, which put my car into an understeer. And I think in the broadcast, they're just switching cameras in that point, so you don't really see it. But if I wouldn't have gotten that understeer and run this half-meter wide, then we would have crashed, because he was flat out through the dust. But yeah, that's high risk, high reward. But still, second place in the first ever Formula E, not Formula E race.
No, Formula E.
Extreme E race. Did you know actually that I used to have contact with the Formula E team and they wanted me to drive for them?
Was it this Chinese connected team, or no, American connected? I remember something about it in like 2019.
Yeah, it was Drayson Racing. It was before 2019. It was before even Formula E was launched. And there was a British team who wanted to develop their own batteries, and they thought Formula E was perfect. And yeah, I was a single-seater driver, just moved into rallycross, and it looked like Formula E was going to be kind of dirty tracks, but I was still like a single-seater pilot, by heart at this time. And they wanted me to drive for them. But when they dropped the rules with the single-make car and so on, the team decided it wasn't for them to be part of Formula E, so we dropped that. But yeah, it was kind of interesting. We were having some discussions about starting to race together and so on.
I didn't think it was that long ago. It would have been mad if you went into Formula E and been driver there. Probably would have a bit more in your bank account then.
Yeah, and small things change life very quickly. But also how everything played out, from me being a circuit racing driver until now rallycross driver. We have the family team. I don't think it could have gone any better. Like, I think I'm at the right spot where I want to be right now.
How would you say it? You did many years in circuit racing and Formula cars. I've done just a few tests. What would you say is the biggest differences between a Formula car? Like the F3 one is the most powerful you drove. What is the biggest difference if you take that one compared to, let's say, the World Rallycross car right now?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference in driving style is that in single seaters, everything is by learning and by reference, and in corner entry is really where everything happens. Once you go on power, the work is done. And you have to commit so hard on the entries to the corner and carry so much speed. And because the feedback you get from the car is much less than on gravel when you're sliding around. So you can learn a fast lap in single seaters by watching the data with the engineers and, I need to brake at 85 meters here, and then you just go out and you brake on 85 meters and it's going to work. And in rallycross, you can't really have that. You have to have a level of feeling to the driving, and the grip changes every lap. There's tarmac, gravel, and the car is so much bigger. Tires allow for a lot of sliding, so you just have to kind of drive on instinct and on feel in rallycross, and much less in single seater.
I can agree on that. The sensations you get from a Formula car is so much less because there's less movement. But what makes you? I understand what makes you quick in a off-road, because better car control and understanding of precision and all the grip circles and all the things that you put together to go quick on off-road. I understand it, but in circuit racing, what makes the difference between when you drove that you were in the top and someone that was in the midfield? What makes you good if you have so much less sensations to work with?
Yeah, it's a good question actually, and it's hard to answer. It's a lot down to committing on the brakes and braking late and trusting in the car also. Like, there are some drivers who, like Robin Frines that I was driving with, he was still in single seaters, he was 100% feeling. He wasn't the guy who would work too much with the data, and he was extremely fast, and he would be the guy who was fast when it started to rain or when the conditions changed. I remember at some point we got a new tire and he was immediately super quick with the new tire. So I mean, and I think it's the same with Verstappen. Not that I raced with him, but he's also like a driver who goes by feeling. Even in these cars where feeling is hard to get to that point, some people are able to do it. And I think the times have changed since I was there. When I was driving single seater, it was the era of Sebastian Vettel, and like late braking was the style. Now it's kind of transformed the cars and the technology. So now it's more important to carry minimum speed than it was back then. They have more grip and so on. So driving styles change with time, but it's always hard to say what makes you fast and not. That's $1 million question, or maybe more than $1 million. It's worth everything in motorsport.
I think it's worth a few in Formula One, a few hundred millions. If you know it, then you get a good contract. But I was just curious. I don't really know the answer. It's such a different world. But I mean, I've driven a Formula 4 car. I think that's the only ones I've driven. I would like to do more. But we've driven a lot of cars over the years. I mean, Extreme E, Extreme H we've driven, rallycross. We've developed cars with Peugeot, Formula cars, RX2, RX2E, nitrocross. It's starting to get quite a nice long list now in our CVs.
Yeah, and even boats now for me lately. Like, it is not enough to drive every single car there is off-road. Like, now I'm even off-road on water. But every car comes with its own challenges, as we speak about a bit in my sim racing project. Like, how I approach doing well and how I approach performance always come from the same place of working hard and being interested in the engineering side of things and understanding the car that you're sitting in, understanding if it's the power between front and rear, if it's the way that suspension is set up, if it's the way that the aerodynamics work, or if it's even like propeller science now or hydrofoils in boat racing. But understanding the car is always the key for me to go fast in whatever I do.
One car from all that you have driven, or boat. I don't think you will choose the boat, but choose one car. Which is the best one that you have driven?
Best car I ever drove.
I know which one it is for me. I think it's the same for you, but you can answer yourself.
It was a 2019 World Rallycross car. I just had like a fantastic feeling that year. And obviously now we've developed further, but for where we were at the time, you know, with the set 89 dampers that I love, like they're like golden dampers for me. But now we have found dampers that are quicker, just that I had a great feeling with the other dampers. And it was like altogether a great year. Like I was at one with the car. It felt like putting on my glove, very natural to drive everything. That was, for me, if I would go back to any car, that would be then. How about you? Which car would you choose?
I didn't really enjoy the 19 car as much, I don't think. Also because I wasn't driving as good as I maybe am now. So I enjoy this current car, or maybe the 2021 car that we had more. But as a whole, that 2018 factory Peugeot, even if it had some faults and were annoying, it was still an unbelievable car because it was engineered, every millimeter of it was engineered to maximum performance. And like there was some tests in Portugal and Loyac that I did that the car was just unbelievable. And I thought to myself, I wish I had this race car. I obviously had the one that we used the year after, still had, let's say, the budget factory car that we had before Peugeot went full out. But as full factory one, I really, really enjoyed after some changes we did. And I was like, gutted that, you know, the project was ending, because that car was so good when we made some of the changes. And it was like the engine was unbelievable, and it was the smell of it was nice somehow. Inside there's always a different smell to every race car, and it was just like, yeah, I wish that we could race that. And I think you raced that in Nitro, that chassis, and that was a really, really good car when I tried it on one of the tests. Like I had the nimbleness and the consistency in the chassis from that light, efficient weight, but then not the transmission that was so messy with the Peugeot and Citroens that caused some weird feelings. And also the dampers were not really good that time in 18. And then to get on, let's say, our own dampers with Erlins, then it was like, that was a really good car also, but I never raced it, only tested it.
I think that's worth its whole episode, that year 2018 with full factory Peugeot, how we started with the semi-factory chassis in the beginning of the year, but Peugeot still managed to put two cars into the 1 year, even though FIA meant for the regulation to make that impossible. Peugeot still found the ways. It was an incredible race car. The engine was absolutely incredible. But that's worth its own episode. Let's move into the next subject, which is esports and my little project in there. So I've been driving a bit of esports again. I've been streaming on Twitch and on YouTube and getting into iRacing. And I've learned a lot in a week. I'm working with Josep, grip engineer, who or he's also a professional sim sports engineer, and he's helping me to guide me through the game. It's so deep, iRacing. Like, you can't believe when we export the data and he opens the data to look at, because it's a game, you don't need to put a physical sensor on anything. So you have all the information of like tire temperature, inside, middle, outside, the ground clearance, damper. Like it's like you had a sensor on every single bit of the car. And the game is so well made so that you engineer the car in the same way in the game as you would do in real life. Of course, you have to also respect there is physics models that's governing everything. But like weather changes, grip feels different lap by lap or session by session is very hard. But I've made some big breakthroughs lately. Actually, on Sunday afternoon, I managed to get the good license grade. So, have you played iRacing, by the way?
Did play quite a lot during lockdown or COVID, and I did some of the there was a series where a lot of like great drivers joined in to do this long endurance races, and I was really good for a while, but I never done like you did now, like deep, heavy analyzing and working with it. I mean, esports, said in the other episode, is so huge and so big. But I watched one of the record, I think it was the first one, and I scrolled to see when you went out on track and or did the race, and you had that crash. I was like, that's for me is sim racing. It's so annoying because there's so many more blind spots, and you can't feel someone touching you in the beginning, or there's not as much respect for margins and risks. So I saw the crash that you had, and I was like, can't do it. Esports, that is typical what happens.
Yeah, and as soon as you have contact in esports, it's immediately big crash. But I've learned like you have to give each other so much more space when you're racing, which makes like committing for a move pretty tricky. And the problem that I've had is that to enter the Road to Daytona race in January, then you have to have a safety rating of minimum 3.0 to get a D license. And because I'm new to the game, I just started it up, I have to run the rookie races. That's where the people who don't have the good licenses are. Like, it's open to everyone, so some people are also really good, but there's also the guys who are not allowed to drive anywhere else and who don't care about safety rating. So, for example, I had one crash where a guy had made a perfectly clean race. It was a race in the Mazda MX-5. It's the lowest category car. It's the only thing I can choose for now. And just when I was finishing the race, I think I was coming in 4th or 5th, and I was following in the slipstream. I was just on his bumper, but okay, finishes there, good race. And then a guy had decided to stop on the finish line. So I'm drafting this guy, and then because in iRacing you have to stop the car to press exit to exit the game, and he just did it in the racing line immediately on the finish line. So I was drafting this guy, and he swerved ahead of me, and then there is a guy appearing out of nowhere. I crash into him, and because you have a crash, you get a bad safety rating. I just done the whole race, and now the safety rating wasn't great anyway.
Imagine if we had that in real life, a rating of how much crashing you do and stuff. It would be, it would maybe be positive. Then if you have a good one, you can get extra pay because you do less damage to the car. That would be perfect. iRacing is onto something here.
It would actually work. Like, imagine if there was a safety rating, like depending on which penalties you got and so on, or how often you were under investigation, because even contact in any form results to bad safety rating. Even if you were taken out, you still had the same contact, so you still get bad points from that, even if it wasn't your fault. But somehow also, the more incidents, the more it's kind of your fault. If you're involved in one crash every 100 races, okay, then it's not really your fault. But if you're involved in a crash every time, even though you say it's his fault or it's his fault, like maybe you had something to do with it,
Yeah, you end up in the crashes all the time, and then for sure there is something. And also, if you have 1 in 100, that's 1%. But if you have something every time, it is all the time. So you should get more. But yeah, I mean, that's the frustrating part. If there is someone else taking you out and you need a good rating right now, it's really frustrating. But it's really interesting with all the sensors, and it shows how much more sensors you can have on the real race car and how much more still data you can capture to understand things even better. But sensors cost so much money, and it's so also expensive to hire people to read them all, because it takes time to read everything and then to put together one-on-one to understand why is car doing that, and what should we do to change it? And maybe instead of having, if you have 3 sensors, let's say, you can make a decision. But then if you have 25, maybe you end up in the same decision or a little bit different, but it takes that much more time to analyze it all. And that's, I think, with esports, it's a great place for engineers. Maybe I'm sure Joseph could say, but to learn from their side too, and work with drivers and understand and read everything and try and optimize the car. It must be a great platform, not only for sim racers and drivers, but also for engineers.
Yeah, Joseph actually made exactly that point, that he believes that iRacing is the perfect platform for a young engineer to learn about engineering, because you have more than you can dream of in a race car. You have every single sensor, and kind of the car responds in a similar way as it does in real life. So why not learn to do data analysis in there? And we will be getting into that in the stream very soon, because the last race I did on Sunday afternoon, I won that race in the Mazda Cup. And having said that, also, I wanted to make the point that in esports, there's so much talent out there. So many talented drivers that can't afford to buy a real race car or get into a real season, but they could actually afford to buy a good sim rig. iRacing is the perfect platform for them because it's so deep, the game, it's so accurate, and there's so many fast drivers. And it's been very hard to win in these rookie races, even because it's, as I said, open to everybody. The race happens every hour. But I did finally win on stream just before ending the stream
nice.
in the last one. So I now have the safety rating even, because I was kind of in a clean race up front. And we can switch into the GT3 car, starting to work on setup, starting to go even deeper into the data. And hopefully then you'll be able to learn something. If you are into iRacing or sim racing, you'll be able to learn how to set up the car.
And also with that, it will be more similar to what you normally drive, a bit heavier car. You can do a bit more late braking, B-style. So I look forward to the next couple of episodes.
Yeah, and we'll also bring in Joseph as a guest, I think, at one point, so we can talk even more about it. But this project has only started. One more thing that's going on now, though, is training, nutrition. I want to ask you, Kevin, what you had for breakfast this morning.
What did I have for breakfast, you say?
Yeah.
Didn't have any breakfast because that's part of... so after my injury in 2022 in Extreme, I went to Red Bull and APC down there and got all the help to recover and things like that.
What's APC?
Athlete Performance Center.
The Red Bull Athlete Performance Center. Yeah.
Yes, Red Bull Athlete Performance Center, which is beautiful place. So many great and talented people working there. And as during my recovery and getting back into shape, also I worked with a nutritionist there, and to try and they basically, well, in a bit nicer way, but it told me, you need to, not that I was fat, but you can get a bit less body fat for sure. So part of that, I did some changes to just measure what I ate, and so came back 6 months later, didn't really change anything. So then we started with fasting sometimes. So if let's say I don't have a training session this morning now, then I also just sometimes then do a fasting to reduce that calorie intake and kind of also make my body manage the energy that it has better. So this morning I didn't have any breakfast, and today is going to be a 16-hour fast from yesterday. And it's just really good. You can even do a low intensity bike ride or a little run, half an hour run during this period to really, really make sure that the body can manage the fast and take the energy from the fast that it has on the body. So it's quite tough. I love eating, which is really sad. I love breakfast.
Why do you go through this pain of not eating? Like, why is it important to be slim?
Well, we have not so much margin on the race car to be in the weight. So any kilo I can save, I think that it's gonna give me performance on track. And also it's about, I know people saying, if you don't look like an athlete, you aren't one. So it's also for myself to know that I look lean, I look strong. For other people to when they look at who should we hire to race, Kevin Hansen looks slimmer than this guy over here, Mark, or whatever his name could be. And it does add in, and for me that's just part of really making sure every aspect of my athlete work is good.
And Mark has no six pack. Kevin Hansen have a six pack. Let's hire him. Let's hire this guy who can do a beach photo shoot.
I mean, I know from experience that it has been a reason why I've been employed in the past. compared to someone else. But
No way.
that is not the six pack itself, but having a good body shape that you look like an athlete and someone that doesn't. It really makes a big part. So that, and along with good training, it's really a key to living a proper healthy athlete lifestyle. And it's really frustrating. I take out as much fat as I can in my food, because that's what really makes an impact on my body, to make sure I stay lean and light, which is like really maybe boring because I can't have a nice piece of cheese sandwich or whatever. Those things have to go away, but that's a sacrifice that you make. So for me, it's doing some, when the training in the afternoon or no training that day, then I fast, and then I remove all the fats from my diet as much as I can. They're hidden everywhere, but really trying to choose low-fat food, and I'm pinpointing in where is the right food for me, so I still get the energy that I need.
Yeah, it's interesting, and the point of like the less the driver weigh, the more we can put the ballast in a good position in the car. That actually translates to a decent amount of performance. And because now in the winter time we can't do anything specifically that helps us during next year's season, training and making sure we are light, not weighing too many kilos, that actually will help when we are on track. So it just kind of feels good to know that we're working towards the goal. But I've done some interesting measurements this year. I've tracked my activity and heart rate throughout the race, not just when on track, but I've tracked it all the weekend. And I've seen some crazy stats that I was not expecting. The people talk about the race is very hard and so on. You get maximum heart rate. To be honest, I haven't. I've gotten to maybe 150 heart rate, where my maximum is, say, 190. So it's kind of far off of maximum. But the shocking thing was not in the race itself, but everything between. So a rallycross day consists of the Saturday, pre-practice 1, pre-practice 2, Q1, Q2, semi-final. That's 6 times on track in one day. And any time in between those runs, my heart rate did not go down to the normal 80-ish that you have in your daily activity. It stayed 100 plus the whole day, 110, 120, even in between the runs. And it was in that blue zone. If I would go biking, that would be my zone 2 heart rate. And that was shocking to me how much energy we use even when we're not in the race car. And I think that's part of why we need to train.
Yeah, it's such a long week, and people forget it. Like you say, we do 6 times on track, but there is impressions all the time. People wanting autographs, and there's engineer, and there is not just 1 or 2 times on a day where you go driving like in F1, where they can zone out, do the race, and then that's done. It's from prep to race to debrief to recharge with nutrition, and maybe recharge your mind, and then you do it all over again 6 times. It's like these cycles the race is short, but the cycle of prepping and finishing that race that you just did is an hour. So it's 6 times an hour sessions almost that you go through every day, and then plus all the little things that people want from you during the, let's say, the lower time between the sessions, which is it gets really draining. And that's why you need to make sure you have a good management of your physical ability to manage the race, not get tired at the end of a Sunday, but also for your mind to be sharp enough all the day. And that's why I do a lot of meditation during the race also.
Yeah, that's also important to kind of calm down. The last shocking fact that I got from this tracking was the amount of calories my Garmin estimated that I burn is in the area of 2,000 calories in a race day. And that comes from just the sheer amount of time.
Additionally from being alive.
Exactly, yeah. Additionally. Yeah. So
3,600, 4,000 almost during a day.
Exactly. So it's like, you go on a bike ride, and then at the end it tells you how much you burned. Like that kind of 2,000 calories. That's for me a very tough session, a long session on the bike, and I'll be tired after. But yeah, it was harder on the body than I was expecting, and that got me motivated this winter, like more into the cardio side of things. I'm spending more time working on my biking strength to have those long sessions in between, trying to be a good dad and trying to work here. And it's the daily puzzle of time is not easy to get a lot of training in, but I'm trying to be strong. I was in the gym this morning because we need some kind of strength to drive the car, but I think most of all we need the cardio and the endurance side of things.
it's the same. It's the struggle of getting every day to work with training, because it does take up a lot of your time, and we have so much other things to do. But I focus a lot on HIIT sessions and heavy strength, because I did a lot of the lower intensity and less, let's say, more volume of strength, but there's simply not enough time in the schedule to have that 2-hour gap every day to do that. It will just be exhausting from all the things. So I've done a lot more HIIT sessions. I pretty much do 2 out of 3 sessions are HIIT sessions now, all the time. And then if I go strength training, it's a lot heavier and less repetitions than I used to, because we saw the endurance of the strength was good, but I just didn't have enough pure strength. So that's what the analysis said down there for me. So I look forward to go back in February, March, when I've done a full year of changing the structure, of completely going from longer and more volume to less volume, but much tougher and harder. I look forward to see how that will come out. And come back to the APC is good memories, part of the family.
Yeah, it's interesting in the winter to try and get in shape, and we only have so long, and all the traveling during the season always takes away like your training routine. So at least for me, I lose weight during the season, but I also lose like my power, my strength and endurance. And then in the winter, I can build it back up. So now it's during that time, and it's kind of fun. I enjoy training a lot, actually.
Yeah, I really want to. I don't know why, because I probably don't need to, but I would like to go down to 68 kilos or something. I'm 70, so at least a little bit lower. That's why it's so important to measure, because I can maybe go down in fat, but go up in strength, and I'm the same weight or so. So that's why the APC is so good, to always get that reference. I did it 1 year between when I was 80 kilos, went down to 70. That was a year, but I look forward to see how it is then after another year, and see how I've improved.
Yeah, let us know when you've been there. Like, you have to run through your results and tell us then. But that's all we had for today's episode in the podcast. Thank you so much for listening. And if you've enjoyed it, please like the episode or subscribe to the channel. That means a lot to us. I've gotten so many texts from friends who have listened in, who said it was interesting. And I really appreciate that. That's been great.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And we'll catch you at the same time next week.